Music on the day of the wedding. The groom ran away. I turned around and married his father. If I can't be the bride, then I'll be your mother. When he returned and saw me still in his house, he thought I was stubbornly refusing to leave. He pulled out a pure white flower from behind and bluntly said that this was his true love, telling me not to harbor any delusions. I smiled faintly and held the hand of the man beside me. Eldest son. Daughter-in-law, why don't you call me the mom and let me listen? Chapter 1. The eyes of the Smith group. Today was supposed to be the day I married Mr. Jones, but the groom who should have appeared at the wedding is nowhere to be found. You mean Steve ran away? My voice turned cold. That seems to be the case. The maid trembled as she spoke. My parents were furious as well for this wedding. The Smith and Jones families have been preparing for months. Invitations were sent to all the major aristocratic families in B City, and the media eagerly reported on it during this time. If Steve had any objections to the wedding, he could have raised them at any time. To run away on the day of the wedding is a direct slap in the face to the Smith family. After comforting me, my parents hurriedly left to discuss a plan of action. As I huddled in a corner contemplating how to proceed with this engagement banquet, there was a commotion at the door. Instinctively I looked up and saw a man in a black suit with a handsome face. This man is Stanley, the current head of the Jones family and Steve's supposed father. Despite being years old, he still looks like he's in his 20s. Stanley rarely attends large events, and even I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen him. At the sight of this man, people from various families in the banquet rushed forward, eager to get closer. Looking at Stanley's handsome face, a crazy idea suddenly popped into my head. As Stanley politely declined each person and walked towards me with large strides, I put on a polite smile and a hint of grievance in my voice. Uncle Jones, I said, I'm sorry for the inconvenience caused to you. This time I've already sent someone to catch him, and once he's caught, it's up to you to decide what to do with him. I will explain to everyone that the wedding will be delayed and all the losses this time will be borne by the Jones family. This is indeed a perfect solution, but I have a better choice now, Uncle Jones. I have been engaged to the Jones family since I was a child, but the person I marry doesn't necessarily have to be Steve, right? What the situation changed too quickly, and Stanley was momentarily taken aback after realizing what I meant. His gaze became deep. Of course, then who do you want to choose? I flashed a sweet smile and without hesitation extended my hand towards Stanley. Would you be willing to be my groom? Chapter. Stanley is not Steve's biological father. Although he is his legal father, there are rumors that Stanley is unable to have children, and he is still unmarried to this day. When he was 25 years old, he adopted a child from a distant relative, and that child is Steve. Being unable to have children is not a big deal for me. With medical advancements nowadays, I believe it can be treated, and if it can't be cured, being childless doesn't seem too bad either. Stanley looked at the bright smile on the girl's face and raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Of course. I didn't hesitate at all. Compared to Steve, Stanley is more than twice as handsome as a father figure. Even if it doesn't work out, just looking at his handsome face every day would make me content. It's definitely better than being betrayed by that ugly Steve. Stanley looked at me intently. All right. Our distinct hands, his strong and mine delicate, were tightly held together, and my heart trembled along with it. The main character of this wedding has now changed without even needing to change clothes. The elegant white wedding dress, paired with Stanley's custom-tailored black suit, made us look like the bride and groom that were meant to be. Everyone attending the banquet is quite astute. Steve's runaway wedding was sudden and not intentionally concealed, so most of the guests at the wedding already know about it. The reporters even caught wind of the gossip and couldn't wait to raise their cameras towards the stage, eagerly anticipating the drama between the two prominent families in B City. Seeing me walk up on stage with Stanley, many people were left dumbfounded. They were quite impressed by the audacity of directly replacing the groom. The MC, holding the freshly printed script, introduced the bride and groom with great professionalism. Now the bride and groom will exchange rings. Stanley took out a ring and slipped it onto my finger, and I did the same for him. When I tried to put the ring on Stanley's finger, I realized it didn't fit. I looked apologetic. The ring was sized for Steve. Time was tight and there was no time to make a new one. Fortunately, we managed to make it work somehow. After exchanging rings, it was time for the groom to kiss the bride. I couldn't help but feel nervous. Stanley's public is that of a reserved and self-disciplined man. He has only attended a few events, and never with a female companion would he be willing to do it. I started to regret dragging Stanley into this impulsive decision, but just as I was lost in my thoughts, I suddenly felt a soft sensation on my lips. I couldn't believe it and opened my eyes only to see Stanley's flawless face. Seemingly aware of my astonishment, Stanley gently Cued the back of my head deepening the kiss. I slowly closed my eyes and the applause of the guests filled my ears as they congratulated us. Order to enjoy some alone time together. Stanley even gave the staff at the villa a short break except for the cleaning aunt who comes once every few days. As a result, Stanley took care of all 3 meals every day. There's nothing I can do about it. Who made me not skilled in the kitchen? Fortunately, Stanley is willing to do it. Every time he sees me eating with a full mouth, he playfully pokes me at a couple of times. Just then a mechanical voice came from the earpiece. Master, someone is knocking at the door. I slipped on my slippers and checked the surveillance outside the door. When I saw the dusty Steve and Lucy, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. They're quite fast. Your eldest son is back. I walked into the kitchen, leaned against Stanley's back and watched him fry a perfect sunny side-up egg. Amazing. Some people are just exceptional. Well, it's up to you to handle. Stanley didn't even lift an eyelid. I've been waiting for you to say that. I left Steve and the little flirt outside the door. Took my time to change clothes upstairs and only then did I open the door. The villa is huge and the yard outside is also quite spacious. This place can even be considered a small estate. Previously, guests would arrive by car, but unfortunately the drivers are also on vacation. I couldn't be bothered to drive and pick them up, so I had to trouble them to make their own way inside. After getting off the plane, Steve and Lucy hurriedly made their way towards the villa without even having a meal. Now they are hungry and thirsty, but in order to play it cool they have to endure and wait at the entrance. Finally, after a long wait, the gate opened, but they had to rely on their own legs to walk in. Wow, this place is really big, Lucy remarked, her eyes filled with envy and jealousy. When we get married, I'll buy you a place just as big, Steve proudly declared, unable to bear seeing his woman envious. It must be very expensive, Steve. It's not necessary regardless of where we live. As long as I can be with you, I'm already happy, Lucy replied, displaying complete dependence on him, fully satisfying a man's ego. What's the big deal? In the future I'll buy you several villas so you can switch between them, Steve boasted, saying it so casually, but as they stood in front of the gate he felt a bit nervous. As for Stanley, who is technically his father, Steve never paid much attention to him when he was a child, but after witnessing how Stanley deals with disobedient people he became obedient himself. As he grew older he gained a deeper understanding of Stanley's methods, which made him even more odd. However, Stanley rarely concerns himself with household matters, which is why Steve dares to be so audacious and elope. He believes that Stanley would never meddle in such affairs. Moreover, as the heir of the Jones family, Stanley cannot treat him the same way he treats those people. With such thoughts in mind, Steve encourages himself and builds up his confidence. Dad, he pushed open the door, but instead of Stanley he was greeted by an unexpected person. I flashed a gentle smile at Steve outside the door. Hello there. You, what are you doing here? Steve instinctively took a step back. Standing behind him was Lucy. Unable to dodge in time, Lucy was accidentally stepped on, causing tears to well up in her eyes from the pain. Upon hearing Lucy's voice, Steve quickly turned to look. Are you okay, Lucy? As long as you're fine, Steve, Lucy replied, gritting her teeth, her voice soft and gentle. In front of me, Steve spent some time comforting Lucy, and then Mary the first. Can't believe you're so malicious. What did I do? I stood there the whole time, not moving an inch. Don't accuse me of causing trouble. Steve realized that his accusation was baseless and redirected his anger. I can't believe you're so shameless. Our wedding didn't happen, so how dare you stay here? I don't like you. We have no future. This is my girlfriend, Lucy. We're getting married soon. What gave you that impression? I was puzzled, speechless. This kid didn't even bother to read the news from that day. But why did he think I would bother him? Have I been bothering him? I went through all the interactions I've had with Steve in my mind, and I'm certain I haven't. Steve must be brainless. Sister, I know you and Steve were engaged before, but you haven't gotten married yet, and Steve and I truly love each other. Please just let us be together. Lucy began her performance, her eyes constantly shedding tears like a faucet. She cried uncontrollably, making it seem like she had suffered great grievances. Steve felt heartbroken and yelled at me, Mary, you've gone too far. What does this have to do with me? Damn it, I'm having trouble keeping up with these two thought processes. Are they crazy? I sympathetically said. Is the mental hospital not enough for you making a scene out here? It took Steve a while to react. You're the one who's crazy. Steve looked at my indifferent expression and doubted that I didn't like him, but he thought about where we were right now. This is the Jones family, not the Smith family. If it weren't for him, why would I be here? It's all an act just to get his attention. Steve softened his tone. Mary the first have feelings for someone else. We have no future together. Please apologize to Lucy and maybe we can still be friends in the future. Who wants to be friends with you? Being brainless is contagious. As I was preparing to retort, a deep and magnetic voice came from behind. What's going on? We all turned our heads simultaneously to see Stanley dressed in a custom-made black shirt that accentuated his perfect physique, coupled with his handsome face, restrained temperament, and his long and slender fingers placing the bowl on the table. Every move he made was incredibly alluring. Lucy was left in awe. Dad, we're back. Why is this woman here? Steve couldn't wait to ask Stanley. Stanley ignored him and waved at me come over and have a meal because I was standing with Steve and Lucy when Stanley beckoned. They thought he was talking to them. Dad, you even made breakfast for us. Steve was deeply moved and immediately wanted to pull Lucy over. Blushing, Lucy followed along, but before they could even reach the table Stanley stopped them. Dad, Steve was confused, but Stanley once again extended his hand towards me. My dear, I'm here. I immediately rushed forward and grabbed Stanley's hand in front of both of them. Turning around to see Steve and Lucy with widened eyes and gaping mouths, I gave them a radiant smile. Elder son, save mom and let me hear it. Steve and Lucy stood frozen in their tracks, their mouths wide open. Stanley paid no attention to them and directly sat down at the dining table, still holding my hand. Let's eat, it's not good for the stomach when it's cold. The two standing there remained stunned for a full minute before finally reacting. Steve even forgot to lower his voice and exclaimed in disbelief, when did this happen? How is this possible just on our wedding day? Looking at Steve, who was so arrogant and self-absorbed just moments ago, now with a mouth wide enough to fit an egg, I felt happy. Serves you right for being conceited. Yours, can you bear to do it? It's not just him who wants to call me dad, Stanley said, raising his hand to rub my head, and he lacks understanding. He has no sense of responsibility, so how can he bear the burden of the Jones family? That's right, he deserves to suffer. I nodded in agreement. The young master is used to living comfortably, never listening to any opposing opinions. How can he bear the responsibility of the Jones group? Stanley acted swiftly. As soon as Steve agreed, he immediately called the Jones family and ordered them not to help Steve in any way. Anyone who violated this order would face the consequences. Steve's parents were also furious with their son. They had gone to great lengths to give Steve to Stanley as their son, but now he couldn't see through the intentions of a woman. If this woman came from a respectable background, they might have reluctantly accepted it, but unfortunately she had a criminal record. So when Steve called his parents to ask for money, they refused without hesitation. They wanted this brat to taste some hardship. Steve was left dumbfounded as his parents hung up on him. Lucy anxiously urged him, Steve, what did they say? Did your parents agree? It's fine, I still have friends. Steve's stubbornness started to show. He called all his friends one by one, but in the end he was only able to borrow a little over 10,000. It may sound like a decent amount, but he used to throw around money that was worth much more than that. These fair weather friends. He was so angry that he slammed his phone hard on the ground, shattering it into pieces. He comforted Lucy, saying, Lucy, don't worry, I won't let you go back to the days of hardship. I'll find a job tomorrow and I can provide you with a comfortable life myself. Lucy remained silent, bowing her head, a hint of something flickering in her eyes. She wanted more than just a comfortable life. No matter how many setbacks Steve faced. I have already gone to Sonia for our honeymoon with Stanley. Sunshine Beach, here I come. Originally I bought 2 bikinis planning to have some fun at the beach. Stanley also noticed the 2 bikinis I was holding, which when combined barely covered half of my body. He raised an eyebrow and said, are you sure you want to wear that yet? Is it not nice? I saw other people wearing them like this and I carefully picked them out. I didn't notice anything off in his tone and happily gestured with the bikini in my hand. Why don't you try them on first? Sure, I readily agreed, but when I actually put on one of the bikinis in the room, I felt a bit shy. It was a light purple bikini that made my skin look fairer and exuded a pure and elegant charm. I couldn't help but feel proud when I looked at myself in the mirror. I never thought I could pull off this look. Isn't this pure? It's simply innocent and pure. Stanley is really lucky. As I walked out of the room as expected, Stanley couldn't take his eyes off me, reluctant to even blink. How do I look? Do I look good? I proudly twirled in front of him. Leighton, go, let's go out and have fun. Just as I was happily bouncing around getting ready to open the door and go out, my arm was grabbed with a strong pull from Stanley. I was pulled into his embrace. Stanley had also changed into his swimwear, his chest and abs exposed. He suddenly pressed me against him and my face couldn't help but flush. What are you doing? I think my wife looks incredibly beautiful like this, so it's better if we don't go out today. I don't want others to see you like this. Stanley reached out and brushed the hair near my ear, his deep and magnetic voice making my heart race. Well, what do you want to do? I gave him a mischievous smile, leaning in close to his ear and whispering softly, what do you think? Stanley's gaze turned intense. Waking up on the second day, I stood in front of the mirror looking at the marks on my body. Stanley, you petty old man. I gritted my teeth, determined to make him sleep on the couch for 2 weeks, no 2 months. When we get back I marry him. Not so easily bullied, but after going through all of that I reluctantly gave up on my skimpy bikini and opted for relatively more conservative clothes. I really don't want to wake up to another day like this. If I keep sleeping for a few more times we might as well end the honeymoon and go back home. The beach in Sonia, the endless sea blending with the blue sky, is truly beautiful. Stanley just sat quietly on the sun lounger watching me play. When it was about time, he called me over to apply sunscreen, feed me fruits, and give me juice. I just lay down flat and enjoyed with my mouth open. Life couldn't get any better than this. As for Steve, he's in a miserable state. He has a habit of being careless with money, although he borrowed over 100,000 from friends before coupled with some savings he could barely scrape together over 200,000, but under his unrestrained spending within less than a month there was hardly anything left of that amount. Steve still hadn't found a job. On the other hand, Lucy managed to find a job as a waitress, taking on the responsibility of providing for the family. Lucy still holds on to hope, thinking that the Jones family might just be pretending to force her out, and she continues to play the role of a good girl in front of Steve. Naturally, Steve was deeply moved and poured his heart out to her. He entrusted the remaining tens of thousands of yuan in his pocket to Lucy, and with Lucy's introduction he found a job in a company. After all, Steve was a graduate from a prestigious university, so he had no trouble getting hired, but Steve was used to being arrogant. Once he entered the small company, he was just a low-level employee, and anyone in the company could step on him. How could he tolerate that? Within 3 days of joining the company, he got into a fight with his boss. He ended up losing tens of thousands of yuan and was honorably dismissed. Steve, you really need to control your temper. If you keep going like this, what will our future be like? After finally saving up a few tens of thousands of yuan, it all went the drain in an instant. Lucy felt very frustrated, but she had to suppress her anger and patiently counsel Steve. I don't want this either. Who does he think he is, bossing me around all day, telling me what to do? And he says I'm a coward. Steve lowered his head, muttering like a child who had done something wrong. After these days of experience, he realized that nobody cared about him. Once he wasn't the young master of the Jones family anymore. Only Lucy still treated him the same as before, and he couldn't afford to lose her. Steve, I know it's not your fault, but we have no money, no influence, only the option to endure and wait. Saying this, Lucy took Steve's hand and placed it on her belly. I'm already carrying your child here, Steve. We need to give him a good life. Really? Steve's eyes lit up. Yes, so Steve, you have to pull yourself together. If we can't give him a good life, I'd rather not have this child. Lucy lowered her head, her voice choked with emotion. Or maybe you can go and plead with Uncle Jones and also your parents for the sake of this child. They might let you come back. Lucy, trust me, I want to give him a good life and I will do my utmost. Steve's gaze became determined. However, he still didn't agree to Lucy's request to seek help from the Jones family. Steve also had his own pride deep down. If he agreed to Stanley's conditions, he had to follow through. He wanted to rely on himself to live a good life rather than relying on others. Steve Grogg stood up and made his way to the police station. Lucy wouldn't get away with deceiving him like this. Just steps away from the police station, his vision went black and he fainted. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a hospital room. Awake, I sat up and poured a glass of water for Steve. What are you doing here? Steve's voice was hoarse and he looked visibly surprised to see me. You fainted at the entrance of the police station and the police called us to inform us, I said truthfully. Stanley had some urgent matters to attend to. As you know, there's a lot going on at the company. After drinking the water, Steve's throat felt much better. Thank you. No need to thank me. It was just a small favor. I waved my hand nonchalantly, sitting back on the chair and observing Steve with a hint of amusement. What are your plans now? I asked. Upon hearing my question, Steve fell silent, not uttering a word. I understood and said, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. You're awake now and my mission is complete. I'll leave. Steve clenched his fists tighter and tighter. Just as I was about to leave the hospital room, he spoke. Wait, Mom. Surprised, I turned around and then with a thud, Steve got off the bed and knelt directly in front of me. What are you planning to do? I asked knowingly. I want to beg you. It was my fault before. I was blind. Please, as an adult, have mercy and help me, Steve pleaded sincerely. To have this usually proud young master genuinely apologize to me was not an easy feat. Feeling satisfied, I nodded readily. All right. Really? Steve seemed taken aback by my quick agreement. I raised an eyebrow disapprovingly. What's with that look? I have a kind heart, you know. Saying that, I took out a piece of paper from my bag and handed it to Steve. Here, this is the reason why your little girlfriend left. Steve eagerly took it, examining it closely, not willing to miss a single word. Lucy was not as innocent and understanding as she appeared to be. During high school, Lucy had already gone through an abortion and later got involved with a few delinquents. Her focus was never on the classroom, so naturally she didn't get into college. At such a young age, she had to start working. Being lazy, she wasn't willing to work honestly and only earned a small amount of money each day. Lucy set her sights on Steve, who often dined at the hotel. A young master with a strong ego, living a privileged life. Men like him were the easiest to deceive. And indeed, Lucy succeeded in deceiving Steve. If it weren't for me appearing unexpectedly and disrupting Lucy's plan, she would have succeeded. The child she was carrying was not Steve's. It belonged to another delinquent. This child was conceived months before she got together with Steve. The pregnant woman became a parent after 5 or 6 months, and that's why she couldn't wait any longer and had to leave. If Steve had become suspicious and discovered the truth, she wouldn't have gained anything. So that's how it is. She really saw me as a clown. Tears streamed down his face. He truly loved Lucy. Watching Steve kneeling on the ground, crying his heart out, I shook my head with a sigh. One should never let their heart rule in matters of love. Steve cried miserably, but he quickly pulled himself together. The day before he was sobbing uncontrollably, but the next day he put on a suit and went to work at Jones Corporation. Naturally, this was arranged by Stanley. However, this time when Steve returned to Jones Corporation, he wasn't in the position of assistant general manager anymore. Instead, he became a low-level employee. According to Stanley, don't expect to gain without putting in any effort. How can you prove your abilities without achieving some results? He had to climb up on his own. Steve, after all, was a graduate of a prestigious university, and he managed to navigate his way through the lower ranks quite smoothly. After spending a few months outside, his temperament visibly became more stable. He handled both big and small matters well. Stanley, who never tolerated any flaws, was also very satisfied. After Lucy left Steve, her life didn't turn out as well as she had imagined. That small-time hoodlum Lee was someone who had always been involved in the underworld and didn't have a stable job. He had been secretly in contact with Lucy all along. After learning that Steve had been kicked out of the Jones family, he directly persuaded Lucy to leave Steve and run away with the money. Lucy did as he said. Worried that Steve would come looking for them, the two of them fled overnight to another city. In the beginning, they still had money to spend and their relationship seemed harmonious. Lucy was already 6 months pregnant, and her pregnancy was starting to show. Due to morning sickness, she didn't have the same youthful beauty as before. Lee didn't say it aloud, but he was disgusted in his heart. He took the money and went out to find other women behind Lucy's back. He even told Lucy that he was going out to work and earn money for her and the baby. Lucy wasn't foolish. Every time Lee came back, there was the scent of perfume on his clothes. "Are you seeing other women behind my back?" Lucy asked with a cold voice. Lee impatiently waved her off. "I'm busy with work all day. I don't have time. Stop thinking nonsense." "Am I thinking nonsense? The scent of perfume on your clothes is so strong that I'm afraid others won't smell it," Lucy said coldly. "Let me tell you, Lee. We're both in this situation together. If you dare to betray me, I'll make you regret it." At first he used sweet words to coax her, but now he was impatient. "It's over." Lee's face stiffened. He turned his head and hugged Lucy tightly with a deep affection in his eyes. "Lucy, rest assured. I will never betray you. I love you." Lucy didn't notice the flicker of disgust in Lee's eyes. She believed his lies and sweetly placed Lee's hand on her belly. "I love you too. Our baby is already 6 months old. In a few more months you'll be able to see him. We'll be happy for a lifetime." "Yes, we'll be happy for a lifetime." Lee's eyes were filled with deep affection,